All right, so this movie's called Seven Women and a Murder. Boy. So we got this lady named Susanne. She's coming by to visit the family during a blizzard, by the way. And the lady answers the door. She just happens to be the maid. Her name is Maria. She invites her in. She sees her mother, Margarita. And then she goes over to her grandmother, Rochelle, who just happens to be in a wheelchair. She meets up with her sister, Katerina. Then we meet her aunt, Augustina. So I think that's 6 people, right? So they're all in the house. They want to see her dad, Marcello. So Susanna goes up to the room and finds out he's dead as shit. I'm like, what? He was laid out in the bed with his knife in his back. So clearly he didn't kill himself because he had a knife in his back. He's that old. He doesn't have that much power to push in his back and kill himself. You know what I'm saying? So they're all thinking to themselves they should call the police, but then they try to check the phones and the phone lines are dead. So Maria's thinking to herself, it has to be somebody in this house. And we think, how? Because the dogs are always barking outside. But she said she didn't hear the dogs bark all night. So considering that option, nobody would have came from outside to come in. So they automatically assume whoever killed him had to be somebody in his house. So apparently we figure out from everybody Marcella's been running low on money. Now Rochelle has some stocks she's been saving up, whatever like that. Apparently these stocks have a lot of money. Not millions, but good enough money to, do what you gotta do. Now Augustina has always had a crush on Marcello, but she quote unquote never really expounded on it. Margarita is the one that's married to Marcello. She's basically calling Augustina out on her bullshit. But since they put laundry out in the air, Augustina talks about some chick named Veronica. Now Veronica was basically Marcello's side chick. But the thing is, apparently she had moved to Paris. But Margarita's like, nah, she's been staying up here. She's been up here for, I guess, like a couple weeks ago. She got like a townhouse somewhere. So now they try to bottom line and get down to motives. Now they're trying to make it seem like Maria was the last one to go in there because she had gave him some tea like around 12 o'clock or something like that. So they think to herself, did she poison the tea? Now Maria started working there as a maid like 3 months ago. So she's basically like brand new. So Katerina's basically making all these wild accusations, but not really wild. They could be, sensible. Then they try to blame the blame on Rochelle. I'm like, Rochelle can't even get up. Like, she's in a fucking wheelchair. Everything Marcello would have done is on the second floor of the house. So then she tries to blame Susanna. I'm like, how? She was just coming there to visit. Or was she? Apparently, she was there the day before, but didn't want to tell nobody. And then that's when she came in. So we're like, why were you here the day before and not say nothing? But before all that happens, we see a shadowy figure on the other side and through the window. We're like, oh shit, who was that? So then they all get scared, run upstairs. They open the door and all of a sudden, Veronica shows up. We're like, oh fuck? Now, Veronica says she hasn't been there in a while, but bottom line is she got a call from somebody. A woman? Which woman? So Veronica goes upstairs and she wants to see if Marcello is really dead, but then she can't get in the door. We're like, the fuck? I thought it was open. So they tell her the key is on a nightstand or something like that. So she uses the key and the key won't open. Then Margarita tries to open it and she can't open the door either. We're like, what the fuck is going on? So then they start airing out dirty laundry again. Then we find out who has the most to gain, like in the will and everything like that. It turns out Margarita has the most to gain because that's her ex-husband. She's the ex-wife. And she's like, of course I would have took like half, but then I would have gave it to my kids too. A likely story. And Veronica comes out like, yes, I had a fling with Marcello, but basically, this is actually my house. Through my people's names and whatnot. But Margarita's like, no, I'm the one that bought the house. She's like, yeah, you bought it from my dad. Because Marcello used to teach Veronica how to horseback ride and stuff like that because he actually has a horseback company or whatever. Margarita never really cared for that because she doesn't really like to be on top of horses. So that's the connection with Marcello and Veronica. Then they talked about some guy named Sir Gucci. Now, Sir Gucci is a guy that used to attend parties with Marcello and whatnot. I guess he used to help him out with certain business ventures and whatnot. So then we get back to Susanna and we think to ourselves, well, why was Susanna here the day before if she tried to act like she just showed up today? And she wanted to tell her dad a secret without the whole, family knowing. So she comes back with this present. And this present she ended up giving to her mom, Margarita. She opens it, it turns out to be little baby boots, indicating that Susanna is actually pregnant. But they never exclaim who by. So we had this one-on-one conversation in a room where it's just Susanna and Margarita, and it turns out that Marcello is not even actually her real dad. It was actually some dude named Humberto, but he ended up passing away in an accident somehow. And he basically took Susanna in. So biological dad, technically a real dad, whatever. Stepdad, there you go. So Susanna and Katrina are not exactly blood sisters. So it was at this one point Maria was about to leave. She was like, yo, fuck this. And then all of a sudden the blizzard started driving up and she couldn't leave. There was one point in the story where Margarita was about to leave because she was about to call the police or whatever like that. But then she comes back that somebody cut the engine wires in her car. We're like, fuck. Now, when Maria tried to leave and come back, she had said the gate was locked. Who would have had time to go out there and lock the gate? And of course, Veronica tried to leave too at one point, but the blizzard was really picking up, so nobody could really leave the house. Yeah, it gets to this point where everybody's just like spilling secrets. Then Veronica tells this secret about Augustine. Augustine used to try to go in Marcelo's room and always try to read certain books to her or whatever like that, but there's one particular book he didn't read. In the book, it had this letter. And supposedly, it was this love letter that Augustine had wrote to Marcello, but the thing is, Marcello never read the letter. But Veronica ended up reading it out loud to Marcello. So she was feeling some type of way about it, and all of a sudden, she started hyperventilating. Like, oh my God, I need my pills. So Katerina was looking for her pills. It's supposed to be in a certain spot, but she comes back. It's like, yo, I can't find her pills anywhere. Susanna goes to look for it, and all of a sudden she finds it, gets it for her. Like, where were her pills at? It was under Marcello's bed. Like, how the fuck would Susanna know that? If it's clearly been in one spot for the last 10 years. And then while they were looking for the pills, all of a sudden Rochelle just gets up out the wheelchair like, you can walk? What the fuck? But she could only stand up for like 5 seconds and she ends up getting back in the wheelchair. I'm like, all right, so it gets to the point where everybody's had enough. They're like, look, the lights end up going out and niggas like, yo, we gotta go get to the police somehow. But there's one scene before that where Augustine is talking to Maria in a room. And Augustine has always had a problem trying to pick up men. She's never been able to pick up anybody. She's been a virgin. Like, she's stressing out. So Maria gives us some tips to how to pick up men. She's like, you gotta go out, you know what I'm saying? Take some Pilates classes or somewhere like that. Some places where there's gonna be men around, you know what I'm saying? Trying to give her motivation speeches and whatnot. Next thing you know, she comes down the stairs looking like a brand new chick. She's trying to flex, talking about, I can have any man I want, blah, 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 all this other stuff. And then that's when the lights went out. So they're like, fuck this shit. We're gonna find a way to climb over this gate and get to the police. Oh, I forgot this one part where Rochelle tries to tell something. And it seems like she's about to relay some information, but right before she does it, Margarita bashes her with a fucking bottle. I'm like, what the fuck? Bashes her head in the bottle, just shoves her in the pantry. And then she's like, she's always talking nonsense when she's drunk or whatever like that. That's how she tries to describe it. It's just like leaves her in the pantry and shit. So basically, we got 4 girls that are going to go outside to try to get help from the police. You got Katrina, you got Susanna, you got Maria, and you got Augustine. They all go trying to find a way to climb the gate. Now, who's staying inside? Veronica, Margarita, and Rochelle, who still happens to be knocked out in the pantry. Veronica talks to her about, wanting to go back to Paris. Then we find out that Margarita was ready to leave Marcello anyway, literally around right before New Year's or something like that. I guess their relationship has been rocky. She said she just wants to go somewhere and she could be in the house and just be alone. But Veronica, she got a little fling on the side too. So they both trying to figure out who the person is. Then they're like, okay, we're going to count to 3 and then we're going to say the name of the person. And then both of them at the same time end up saying Sir Gucci. They're like, the fuck you trying to take him to? And then they start brawling, they pulling at each other's hair, they beefing and all this shit. Meanwhile, the girls are trying to climb over the gate. Katerina's trying to climb over. She's like, she messed up her hand. They told her to get back down. Like, all right, let's just go back to the house. We're going to have to wait for the storm to subside. All of a sudden, they hear screaming. They obviously hear the girls fighting. But they think the murderer's back in the house. But when they're running back to the house, Maria just looks up like she's looking at the window like she sees something. So we're like, what the heck does she see? So Margarita and Veronica end up stop fighting after a while. And then all of a sudden, she asks her, have you ever kissed a woman? And they're like, what? They end up kissing each other, then all of a sudden the girls come back in looking like, the fuck is this? So everybody gets warmed up at the fireplace, and I feel like Maria saw something because she's like, okay, it's time for people to come out and tell the truth about some shit. Let's get this rocking. So then Katerina starts talking, and basically she was awake for everything that went on in the house. Now Rochelle's back in the room at this point. They woke her up and got her in there. Now at a certain point in the story, Rochelle was looking back and she was like, oh, my stocks are gone. Because she always hides her stocks under the bed, but she couldn't find them in there. So Katerina starts with Rochelle. Now she talks about the situation at a certain time. Rochelle was in Marcello's room and they were arguing about some stocks or something like that. And it's true Marcello needed the money, but he couldn't get it. Now it comes to a situation where Augustina was in the room, but he never wanted anything to do with her and he kept pushing her out the room. Then it comes to a scene where Maria was in the room and she was just giving him his tea. But on the low, the reason they suspected Maria because she was smashing Marcello too. I was like, oh, they was getting down for the get down. Then they talk about when Margarita was in the room and she heard her explaining to herself about the whole leaving him or whatever like that around Christmas time. Then we get to Susanne, where she actually heard her in the background talking about, the baby and everything like that. So Katerina heard everything. Now here's the crazy thing. They all just assumed that Marcello was dead because they never checked his pulse or anything like that. Turns out Marcello was still alive. So this is what Katerina did. Because Marcello really wanted to die, he wanted to hear about how everybody felt about him regarding the wills and everything like that. So he planned to fake his death. So this is how Katerina helped out with that. She put fake blood on his back and had a broken knife to make it look like it was stabbed in his back. So he's done deal, right? The reason the key didn't work is because Katerina switched the keys or whatever like that. So obviously it was a fake key. She was the one that locked the gate. She was the one that cut the engine wires. She was the one that put the medication under Marcello's bed, the medication that Augustina needed. But because Susanna would hide stuff under the bed, that's how she knew to look there. So Katerina basically did it as a way to see who would really go after his fortune and whatnot. It's all a bunch of wild shit. So basically they all find the real key. They try to go into his room, but he disappeared out the room. So they checked the balcony and he fell off the balcony. This nigga's now dead for real. So when the detective comes, they say he fell down the stairs or some shit like that. But I'm like, how the heck did he fall down the stairs that they found him in the back out the damn balcony? So the detective's like, yeah, if you got any more information, you call it, whatever like that. And because Augustina thinks he's a cutie, she's trying to throw her hand out there. She's trying to get the hook up, you know what I'm saying? You know what's good. He's like, yeah, I live over by the lake, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you're kind of close. You're not that far, huh? So she gives the card to Augustina and, he basically goes about his business. So basically, Rochelle is like, man, I'm ready for a drink. So Veronica pops out the blue and she's talking to Susanna. So she's like, so who's the baby daddy? And she's like, yo, you was hanging around Sir Gucci too. And she's like, no, that's definitely not him. No. Not really. He's like, what the fuck? So then the movie just ends with them standing by the house. They're like, so what do we do now? Like, I guess we just go back in the house. And that was pretty much the end of the movie. I mean, like this, the whole thing is freaking wild. I might have been all over the place in my explanation, but trust me, that's how it feels. So it's like everybody thought he was dead the whole time, but the whole thing was, it was all a fake death to try to figure out who would go after his money the most. And then he ended up jumping off the balcony, really dying. 7 Women and a Murder on Netflix. Check it out.